Welcome back. In this video, we put Kant's Deontology together in a package that can help you make ethical decisions in everyday life. It's imperfect, as the application of all moral philosophies is, but if you use these steps, it can help you come to a decent ethical conclusion along Kantian guidelines. When we're going to solve an ethical quandary using Kant's Deontology, like with everything else, we're going to start by looking at the options that we've identified. So we're going to consider all the possible options. And then we're going to start whittling the options down towards acceptable solutions. And we do that by applying the two principles from Kant's theory. So first, we're going to apply the idea of universality. That principle, we're going to eliminate any options that could not logically be moral standards for everyone. So if the maxim expressed by that option leads to a kind of logical contradiction, then we throw that option out. If that's not the case, then we keep that option in. Then we'll apply the respect for persons principle and eliminate any options that exploit anyone. Remember that it has to be an exploitation relationship and not one of cooperative partnership. And then any remaining options represent ethical actions. So here we're starting with a range of options and we're funneling down towards appropriate solutions. And with this theory, what you'll often find is that there are more than one acceptable option, and then all of those options are morally permissible, meaning you can act on any one of them and be morally correct. So let's remind ourselves what our options are from Karina's dilemma. What should Karina do about the illegal chemical dumping at her company? The first option that we identified was that Karina could keep quiet and do her job. The second option we identified is that Karina could quit her job and work elsewhere. She might just leave the company entirely. The fourth option, Karina could blow the whistle on the company via her reporter uncle. And then the fourth option, Karina could give the company managers an ultimatum to stop the dumping or else she'll report it. Let's start by looking at the principle of universality and see what we come up with here. Now the first two options look like there's a reason to reject them. What's the maxim expressed behind the idea of keeping quiet or quitting her job and working elsewhere? It looks to be that the maxim that expresses is a kind of moral indifference. So one ought not to do anything about moral problems. Now, interestingly enough, Kant considered this particular maxim in his own thought to see whether or not we could universalize what he called a maxim of indifference. That everyone ought to do nothing. Now, interestingly enough, he didn't find that there was any logical contradiction in saying that no one should do anything about wrongdoing, but he did think that instead there was a kind of a different kind of contradiction, that it contradicts what rational people would want for themselves in similar circumstances. We call this now something like a rule of rescue. So imagine if you were the one who fell down a well, no matter what the resources were that had to be expended in order to get you free and safe, you would want that done in your case. And so logic requires that we extend that same principle to others. Now that's not, strictly speaking, the sense of contradiction that Kant started with, but we'll let that pass because that's a question for a higher level ethical theory class in this one. And on the grounds of what we might call that rule of rescue, the desire to have other people help us when we're the ones who are in need rules out options A and B. We could not rationally will that be the rule for everyone, the maximum of doing nothing. Now, the next two options, Karina could blow the whistle on the company via her reporter uncle, or that Karina could give the company manager an ultimatum to stop the dumping or else then report it, don't seem to lead to any contradiction at all. The maxim there seems to be one ought to do something about wrongdoing or injustice, and those maxims seem perfectly consistent with everyday morality and don't lead to any weirdness conceptually when we try to universalize them. So those pass the first test of universality. Now we have to apply the respect for persons rule, which tells us we should eliminate any options that exploit people. Is it the case that by blowing the whistle on the company via her reporter uncle, or by giving the company manager an ultimatum to stop the dumping or else she'll report it, that Karina is exploiting anyone? Well, we have to remember here that motives matter for Kant. The why we do something, the making ourselves act a certain way because it's the right thing and for no other reason, is what gives our actions moral worth. We have to take that into account here. Why Karina blows the whistle or why Karina confronts the company manager has to be considered. Is Karina blowing the whistle so she can be famous in Aaron Brockovich fashion and have a movie made about herself? Well, if that's the case, then her motive doesn't seem like the right one, and she'd be using her uncle as a stepping stone to her own fame and fortune, and in fact putting him in harm's way to do so. right? Because the company is not going to be very excited about what's coming out in the news. Or Karina might be doing the same thing by exploiting the company manager and the folks as a way of getting her own benefit down the road, a kind of internal blackmail, let's say. Now, if those are her actual motives, then that would come to a kind of exploitation. But let's give Karina the benefit of the doubt. We have no reason to think that that's what her motives actually are, given the case. And so Karina's blowing the whistle to right wrongdoing is not a matter of exploitation. That would count as being a morally acceptable option. Neither would be giving the company manager an ultimatum to stop the dumping or else then reporting it, because she's giving due respect to the company and to the public by advancing all of their interests. So here Karina's being, in a way, cooperative while she's trying to right the wrong that the company's engaged in. And so that also looks like a morally acceptable option, as both C and D pass the respect for persons test, assuming that Karina's motives are in the right place. So all remaining options represent ethical actions. That leaves us C and D. In this case, Karina could either blow the whistle via her reporter uncle, or she could confront the company manager before reporting it. Either one of these options represents an ethical choice as far as Kant's deontology is concerned. That concludes our application of Kant's deontology. As you see, it's a very powerful tool for making ethical decisions. That closes our unit on Kant as well. Going forward, you'll learn about the ethical theory of contractarianism.